Hello guys and girls, and welcome back to another episode of SebTalksSports, sponsored by Memsham UK, the place to go to for brand new, authentic, signed NFL memorabilia. That intro music and podcast theme was created by All-Pro New York Giants running back, now music creator and friend of the show, David Wilson. Go and check him out on all of his social media platforms at For Still Running on Twitter and Instagram, and his music under David E. Wilson across all good music streaming services. He's free for business, so drop him a message if you want some beats for your podcast, advert, commercial, absolutely anything you need. Before I get into this episode, I just want to say that if you're not already following Seb Talk Sports across all platforms, then please do. You can find me on Facebook, Seb Talk Sports, YouTube, Seb Talk Sports, Twitter at Seb Talk Sports, and Instagram where I'm primarily active. Again, it's at Seb Talks Sports. Today I've got a slightly different guest. This is the first sports journalist I've ever had on my podcast. It's another throwback episode, so all of the questions such as West Ham's hopes of survival in the Premier League, which of course they did achieve, and Mahomes' then new contract were all hot off the press at the time. It's one of the United Kingdom's top NFL broadcasters and journalists, and host of ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show. A true pioneer of growing gridiron here across the pond, it's none other than Nat Coombs. Enjoy! My guest today is one of the UK's very best NFL broadcasters and journalists, boasting well over a decade of experience in the field, working for some of the biggest sport networks in the world, and host of ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Nat Coombs to Seb Talk Sports. Nat, how are you doing?
Very good. Thanks very much for such a lovely intro. It's good to be here.
You got it. Thanks for coming on today.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. My absolute pleasure. Is that a Sheffield United flag?
It is indeed, yeah.
Fine. Go the Blades. Go the Blades. Having a much better season than my West Ham, of course.
We'll touch on West Ham in a little bit. Okay. So I said at the top that you're undoubtedly one of the best NFL broadcasters and journalists in the country, which is absolutely true. So I want to know, what is it that initially sparked your interest in journalism? And when did you know you want to do it as a career?
It's a great question. My interest in the NFL began as a kid. So I always loved the NFL. I always loved sport. But I didn't have a game plan to have a career in sports. I kind of fell into it in many ways. So I got into the business, so into broadcasting through stand-up comedy. I cut my teeth as a stand-up, starting at the very bottom as every stand-up does, doing the open mic circuit. Your 5 minutes in pubs and all around the country, and built up a lot of reps actually on the road, which has really helped me, I think, with my live presenting. And I got quite lucky. I was fortunate to get signed to an agent relatively early on, and it was quite fortuitous really, because I wasn't one of the hot acts per se that were out there, but I just was right time, right place, had a great gig. There was an agent in the room, and that led to me starting to do broadcast stuff. And as I started to do that, when you're in that situation, what are you interested in? And I didn't just want to be a presenter for the sake of it. I hadn't really even thought specifically about presenting, but these opportunities started to come up, and I started to think, well, I love sports. Can I do both? Am I able to do both? And that's where it started. And I started to do guest spots on shows, on 5 Live, shows like that. And then the NFL on Channel 5 was a break that came in 2007, would you believe? So I'd been doing probably less and less stand-up, more and more broadcasting, and had made a show with the guys that produced that show, a poker show, another love of mine. I don't love it as much as NFL, but and so I knew the producers. Colin Murray was my predecessor on the show. He had left for various different reasons, so the spot came up, and I screen tested for it, and was lucky enough to get the gig. So that's kind of how I fell into it. And as a result of that, as I started doing more and more broadcasting, I wanted to always underpin that with writing. So I was probably unorthodox in that respect, that the broadcasting came first and then the writing followed that. I think a number of people have probably looked at it the other way around.
The UK's love for the NFL has grown just exponentially in recent years. And individuals like yourself and Sky Sports and Neil Reynolds have been a huge reason for that. Just absolute pioneers of growing gridiron here across the pond. So I know that you cover a whole host of sports like baseball and football or soccer, which is also great. I know it's string to your bow. But what is it particularly that you love about the NFL that puts it at the forefront of your broadcasting career?
It's a great question. It is my true love. I mean, I love football, despite being a West Ham fan. I love baseball as well. But there's virtually every, I'm sure like you and like a lot of people watching and listening, we love most sports, right? But the NFL, there's something particularly special for me with it. I suppose I just love the flow of the game in particular, which I know is paradoxically, the thing that detractors cite most is what they don't like about it. But I love that. I love the suspense that it creates, and I love the complexity of it, and yet the simplicity of it at the same time. So I love all of that. Covering the game, lots of different reasons, really. I suppose if you go back to the late night stuff I did, back in the day, Channel 5 and then Channel 4, those kind of broadcasts were just wonderful to be involved with, because we had so much freedom. We had so much freedom. There was definitely, I guess, a cult vibe about it, a sense of community that we're all, whether it was me and Mike broadcasting it, everyone watching at home, we're always watching the same game together, and I love that about the NFL community. So the freedom I had with that particular show, but the NFL community as well in this country, it is so supportive. It's very much, a brotherhood, a sisterhood. Everybody's together as fans, and there's just less aggro. Everyone seems to, by and large, be positive, have everyone's back, and as a broadcaster involved with it, that's the important thing. Whereas football is just much more aggressive, I think. I love it, but it's just a different vibe. It's a different vibe.
You love it, I love it, and covering it is something we both love to do, but obviously it can be a very stressful and difficult job as well, especially given when it's live, either on radio or in front of the camera presenting games, which of course you've done for BBC across many other networks. So that being said, what was the biggest challenge you've ever faced as a broadcaster, and how were you able to overcome it?
Well, too many to mention. Like a lot of things in life, and certainly in sport, getting reps is the single most important thing. The more that you do it, the more comfortable you become doing it. And it's not as simple as that. You've got to work hard, of course, like anything, you've got to work hard, but without overanalyzing what you do. I think that can be, again, a problem in many walks of life, but certainly in broadcasting, you get a bit obsessed and start to look too much. At the same time, you've got to consider what you can work on and get better at, and always strive to do that. And I definitely do that. I mean, I look back to that first year I did it, and I'm not being self-deprecating, I wasn't a great live presenter by any stretch of the imagination. And I look back, I was having a conversation with my wife the other day, actually, saying, I said that when I first joined ESPN in 2010, and I was doing a football chat show there on ESPN with Kelly Cates, who obviously now does the Premier League coverage. And I remember going into, and actually I followed Chappers. Chappers had presented that show the previous year or two. And I was having this conversation with my wife last night that I went into that show having done 3 years on Channel 5, and I just started 5 Live actually that summer as well. So I am experienced. I mean, I got 3 years of live TV and I'm in radio now. God, I really wasn't at all. If I was doing that show now, it'd be twice as good. And this is it. So it's a bit like when you look back at pictures of yourself as a teenager, you think, oh my God, what was I? Why was I wearing that? And so you can always improve. Being prepared is such great advice. Actually some of the best advice I had, I mean, that's a given. And I think I always over prepare. So if I'm doing a live game for the BBC at Wembley, I will always have too much to talk about, and I won't get through half of it, particularly when you're working with OC and Jay and Carlson, the conversation, inevitably goes all over the place, and in a good way. And obviously you're reacting to what's happening on the field, but nevertheless, I will be ready for that. I remember one time we were doing a game, I think it was on Channel 4, but it was one of the late night games, and we had a storm delay. It was a game in Florida, a storm delay it was about an hour and 3/4 we had to fill. Now, when you're working with Mike Carlson, that's 3 questions. Give it the length of his answers. But look, we were, because it was a late night show, it was a very different kind of thing to having to fill prime time on the BBC. And we could go off on all the tangents we always would go off on anyway, and that was okay. But the point remaining, that was a lesson that taught me, okay, make sure you're prepared, make sure you got a lot of stuff ready to go. And the other great bit of advice I had on that was from Colin Murray. So I remember early on in my career, I would be internally mortified if I made a mistake, and often that will probably show. You can mask these things a little bit, but the audience will be able to tell, and it'll probably affect your performance. And it's a bit like, if you're dropping, a surefire touchdown or missing an open goal, sportsmen learn to forget about it. And okay, what about the next catch? What about, and so you got to teach yourself that. But Colin, I remember, said, even if you do, or when you mess up, just laugh about it. Just have, everybody does. Don't worry about it. Don't look mortified. And that's great advice. So I remember when I went the the first live game I did for the BBC, and we just moved over from Channel 4, and it was going well. And I was thinking, you know, it still feels like not necessarily a step up, but it's the BBC. This is my first game anchoring a live event for the BBC. I really want to bring my A game. I'm at 2 hours in, and you know, all those early stage nerves are gone, and you know, it's rolling, and OC being funny, and J Bell and Carlson, and we, off the back of something, we were having a laugh. So I was slightly distracted because we were laughing about something, and in my ear, the director said, "Okay, Nat, you don't have time for another question, so just fill for 30 seconds, and then we'll throw back to the game." So I thought, okay, I'll do the classic thing in that situation is I'll plug social media. That'll buy me some time. So when you see a presenter say that, they're probably buying time. And I said, so don't forget, you can get in touch with the studio. Use the hashtag C4NFL. My director said, no, BBC NFL. And if that had happened early on in my career, I would have gone scarlet red. I would have, don't mention it. And it would have been really awkward. But I just laughed and said, Freudian slip, BBC NFL, and that got a laugh. And you know, of course, I got one or two people hit me up on Twitter say you're being fired in the morning, but apart from that, I got away with it. So yeah, so have fun with it, laugh when you make a mistake, and be prepared. Those are the two good rules, I think.
The biggest news this week, and certainly in the last few months, is the Patrick Mahomes deal, which is just crazy. 10-year extension, $503 million, $477 million in guarantees, and it keeps him in Kansas City until 2031. So, of course, there are so many questions to ask surrounding this deal. But I want to know, what were your initial reactions when it first broke, and what does it mean for the Chiefs going forward with regards to controlling the cap for the next decade?
Yeah, it's a great question because, I mean, ultimately, I think it's a great deal. And I was listening to Mike Lombardi talking about this, who talks a lot of sense. He's got a great podcast with Adnan Burke, which is worth a listen. And Lombardi said, you can never overpay for a great player. I think that's maybe stretching it. I think you probably can overpay, but I get his point, and I don't think they have. I think when you've got a quarterback like Mahomes, who quite clearly is a generational talent, and so it might be on the steep side, but why wouldn't you? I believe this as well. Like if you take a player's level or two down, which is, let's face it, most of the NFL when you're talking about Mahomes, but this idea that whether it's a player that you particularly want or in the draft as well. So look at the Raiders in the draft here, you know, in the last couple of years in Mayock, people criticizing them and the general principle of reaching up. They're reaching up for somebody. And if you want that player and you feel he's strong, then no, it's not reaching up. And in the same way, I think deals are done. It might seem in the market on paper that it is, you're overextending. But if you are sure, and I think with Mahomes, it's probably one of the most straightforward decisions to make, that he is your quarterback of the future and can be with you and drive success for that long, then it's absolutely a smart deal. The impact, of course, is going to be seen through their flexibility going forwards. But again, I think you take that. I think Chiefs fans would take that. If you're locking in Mahomes for a long period of time, and it means there are less Sammy Watkins style deals you can do going forward, then you probably live with that, you know. So I think it's a great bit of business. Of course, the impact now it's going to have on the market, and Dak Prescott and his agent are pretty happy campers about now, and Deshaun Watson as well. I mean, they're both going to benefit from this massively. So yeah, it has a knock-on effect, but I think it's a smart business by the Chiefs for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so there are a lot of quarterbacks on the hot seat this year, in my opinion. Real make or break passes, either on prove-it deals or short leashes that can be taken out of the starting lineup next year if things go pear-shaped. So what QB do you feel is the most on the hot seat this year regarding his surrounding talent and the ever-changing nature of the league? And therefore, which franchise is most likely to have a new starter under center next year?
Well, Trubisky, I think, is in, probably particularly because of the Mahomes deal as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at their trajectories. Trubisky clearly is running out of time, so I think he's very much on that list. I suppose Carr as well is. I'm not sure why I and maybe Raiders fans are seeing this more perceptively than I am, because I haven't watched every single Raiders game, and so maybe I'm getting a slightly artificial perspective here, but Gruden just doesn't seem to rate him, and I don't get that. You know, I think Carr to me looks legitimate. You know, he's not a Mahomes and he's a different type of player, obviously, to others around him. But I think he's a solid top 12, top 14 quarterback in the NFL. Certainly when he's on song and fit, and I think that's good enough to get you to the Super Bowl. So I think Carr is definitely on the hot seat as well. Yeah. What about you? Who do you think?
I mean, Trubisky is one of the answers. I think Dak as well, just because, I mean, it's sort of like a no excuses year. You bring in Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett's gone out, and the surrounding talent, when you pair Amari Cooper with CeeDee Lamb, and you've got Zeke probably set for a bounce back year, there are no excuses this year. And I think, given obviously the pressure on that franchise as America's team, and it's the biggest franchise in the league, I think that if he doesn't perform, then they'll be looking at either a Trevor Lawrence trading up for him or someone else who's available, because that's the thing with the NFL. There's always a new batch of quarterbacks coming in the next year.
Yeah, big time. And you know, with Dak and the franchise tag, I mean, is he kind of Kirk Cousins it out for a for a few years? That could be interesting. Yeah. But Trubisky's the as you say, the clear cut hottest of hot seats for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk some Dolphins, because obviously you're a Dolphins fan, and every supporter has a story of how they fell in love with, and in some cases got stuck with, a franchise. So how did Nat Coombs end up siding with South Beach and becoming a Dolphins fan?
Well, as a kid, so I discovered the NFL, like many people in my generation, turning it on when it was on Channel 4 back in the day, the first time around, you know, pre-Sky, or Sky existed, but I didn't have it, pre the internet. So it was, it just appeared on my screen one day, and what is this amazing Technicolor piece of brilliance? And so I genuinely fell in love with it straight away, and I couldn't wait for the next week and the highlight show and next week. And then I tried to buy VHSs as much as I could, and I subscribed to First Down. So I did also subscribe to Shoot and Match as well, and but was the only kid in the playground with First Down. And the Dolphins just stood out to me then. Marino, I think, quite obviously, and the style of play, and they're always often involved in shootouts. I think that legendary game against the Jets was one of the first ones I saw, and the Marx Brothers, I just like their swagger. I didn't really think too much about it. I'd never been to Florida. I didn't get any merch brought back from Miami, which is often a way I think people pick their team. It just fell into place. I just like them. I think I like the logo, all of those things. So stuck with them through thick and thin, and mainly thin. Let's be honest.
Well, it's funny you say that, because obviously, as a Dolphins fan, for the first time in a little while, things are starting to look up in Miami, because obviously, you've got an exciting young quarterback in Tua to sit behind and learn from Ryan Fitzpatrick, and have some offensive weapons in Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, and that rock bottom O-line, which was worse in the league according to PFF last year, has been addressed with Ted Karras, Eric Flowers, and 3 early round picks in the draft. So, how confident are you in the Dolphins going forward, especially given the AFC East isn't the strongest division in the league, and obviously we have the extra playoff spot in each conference now? So, what's your confidence in the Dolphins, and how should Brian Flores be approaching the season, given the personnel?
I think he's definitely one of those coaches at the moment where there is a lot of buzz and bounce on, because of how bad last season looked like it was going to be, and how competitive he made us, relatively speaking, with a, let's face it, one of the weakest rosters in the NFL. Had to withstand the fire sale of Minka and Tunsil and key assets, and somehow made us competitive, right? And of course, it wasn't just him. I mean, I think Fitz needs to take a lot of credit for that. And but nevertheless, that is a good sign. You get a coach that can come into a bad situation and not completely capitulate, then great. Having said that, and look, I really, really like what I've seen from Flores and the organization, particularly backing the defense and enhancing the defense. He clearly has a vision for that D and for the team, and they're supporting him with that now, and that bodes well. And so everything looks promising. I am not buying into this argument that the Patriots are going to be bad, and this was pre-Cam actually. I thought everyone was getting a little bit carried away here, which is astonishing when you think about this organization that we're talking. This idea the Patriots are going to be a 4-12, 5-11 side is madness. It's nonsense. And the Jets is very much a work in progress. I need to deep dive a bit more into the Jets. So on my ESPN show, we're looking closely at teams as we build up to the season. And I'm looking forward to getting Mike Tannenbaum actually used to be, of course, front office at the Jets. He's ESPN in the States now and comes on our show quite a lot. So I think we might well, tap him up to have a real close look there. But at the moment, I think it's fair to say, even at a surface level assessment, they are going to be a work in progress. If they have a winning season, that will represent real progress for them, I think. And the Bills clearly are going to be very competitive again, and they've added Diggs and look legit. And I rate Josh Allen as well. I think he's a really, really talented players. So I kind of buy into him taking them to the next level. So I think we're looking at 4 teams that are going to be around about the same place. And so that gives the Dolphins a fighting chance. At the same time, I'm not sure it's necessarily as clear-cut as it's us or the Bills in that. I think the Patriots will be competitive and the Jets certainly won't be a blowout. So cautiously optimistic will improve on last season. Are we going to be a playoff side? Not so sure this year.
As long as Bill Belichick's there on the sideline,
right?
England, then yeah, they've got every chance.
Absolutely, and crazy town and McDaniels as well. Like, I know that the offense, and in terms of assets and personnel, isn't particularly strong, but it's McDaniels here is one of the most successful and impressive offensive coordinators in the history of the game, alongside the greatest coach in the history of the game. I mean, and it pains me to say this as a Dolphins fan. The idea that, because they lost a few pieces, they're going to be 4-12. Like, not going to be a 4-12 side.
While the NFL is my favourite and probably yours, our love for sport doesn't just stop at gridiron, because I'm a huge fan of a number of sports, including football or soccer, and obviously you're a lifelong West Ham fan. Even giving Greg Rosenthal a shirt of his own and deciding to for him is amazing.
He thanks me for that. He's often, he messages all the time when games are on. He's a proper fan. So he was watching the Chelsea game the other day when we won, which was one of the best results of the season. And he was very, very excited about that. But most of the time it's been abject despair. And I did warn him. I said, this is not going to be an easy ride. He said, it sounds great. I'm up for it. So yeah, Greg, if you're out there, I'm sorry for the pain I've inflicted on you.
That being said, what are your thoughts on the current state of the team, and which additions do the Hammers need to add to either improve on this year's position, or if worst comes to worst, get promoted back up to the top flight?
Look at the positive side, huh? Oh God. I mean, so we got four points from 6 with the Chelsea Newcastle game at the time we're recording this. So playing tonight, so this might change by the time it goes out, but I'm still not so sure. Watford won last night. I still don't think we're safe. Could be lulled into a false sense of security here. So a few things on this. This might be a surprising take and maybe definitely a minority take. I like David Moyes. I think this idea that David Moyes is a bad manager is ridiculous. This idea as well that he is a really dour, negative manager, I think is just misunderstanding how he approaches the game. I mean, I think, at times, certainly during his phase at Everton, he was looking at, I guess, a defense-first approach, but, was successful and got them in the Champions League. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's time at West Ham. He's not this tactically naive guy that people make out. I remember the first time he was here and he put on Arnautovic up front, down the middle, and played, I think it was João Mario and Lanzini off him, quite a lot behind him, and just was just imaginative in the way he approached it. So I like Moyes. I think he's underrated, and I'm confident he's the right man for the job at the moment. Now I'm sure West Ham fans out there are probably spitting their drinks at the screen in utter dismay, but I do, and I think I think he's misunderstood. So I don't think the problem is the manager. And look, unless we get a Klopp-esque figure rolling down the street, but that's just not going to happen. Let's get realistic about it. We need more firepower up front. I mean, when when Chicharito left and we started the season, and Haller's fine, but then you've got a Jetty behind him, and Antonio's done such a good job in that role. But he's, we need more firepower for sure. I think quite a few of the new signings in the last 12-18 months have been good. Like, I like Fornals a lot. So I think it's a good squad. We're not a championship squad, and hopefully we'll have enough to stay up, but we'll see.
Now I'm going to end with some quick fire questions. You ready?
Go for it.
I think I know this, but dogs or cats?
It's a tie. Definite tie.
Twitter or Instagram?
Twitter.
Favorite music artist of all time?
Springsteen,
yeah. Can't go wrong.
And the E Street Band, to be clear, yeah.
How did it feel to have pro quarterback Dan Orlovsky criticising your throwing action? Describe it in one
Unbelievable. Stitched up is what I'm going to say. If Ollie Thornton, my producer, is watching this, he is laughing. Absolutely stitched up. That's all I'm saying on that.
Your kicking action was a little bit better, so that saved
it was. That is fair. And to be fair as well, that is not how I normally throw, but I'm just digging myself deeper here. We'll move on from that. Hey, I'm a goalkeeper. What do you expect?
That's fair. Favourite sports film?
Field of Dreams. Always tear up at the end when he plays catch with his dad. I will do it now. I know if you put it on now, I will stop crying.
So I know you're very vocal about this on your podcast, on Nat Coombs show.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much mistake was trading away Minka Fitzpatrick?
Oh, God, I am vocal about that. I would have said before the draft, 9.5. Whereas now, when I think about what we've acquired and I like, in theory, what we've done in the draft, then I'll say 6.5. I'll say 6.5.
What is the Dolphins' record going to be into the 2020 NFL season?
I'm going to go Jeff Fisher-esque 8-8.
Yes or no? Do West Ham stay up?
Yes, we stay up.
And finally, what is one piece of advice you'd give to all young budding broadcasters and journalists looking to make a career in the field?
I would say just keep at it, keep working, be productive, just do stuff. You know, I get messages from people saying, I really want to get into this. And you say, well, are you writing anything? Have you got a blog? Do you do a podcast? Are you filming anything? So just, create and do stuff, and it will all come together if you keep at it. Yeah, that's probably the best advice I can give. Yeah.
Nat, thank you so much for your time today. I've had an absolute blast. Where can people find you on social media and check out your work as well?
I'm at Nat Coombs on Twitter. I'm on that on Instagram as well. The Nat Coombs Show is my ESPN pod, which drops during the season 3 times a week. In the off season, we're doing 1 or 2 a week as well. So that is available on all good podcatchers. And I obviously do a lot on TalkSport as well. I do a regular show with Greg Brady on a Sunday, world or global sports show, snappily titled Going Global. So those are your best bets.
Wonderful. Nat, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, man. Good to be on.
That was my interview with the fantastic Nat Coombs. Such a great guy and a man leading the way in terms of British NFL coverage. Fingers crossed for your Dolphins this upcoming season, Nat. Please go and check out Nat's fantastic podcast, ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, as well as everything else Nat's up to. All the links you need are in the description of this episode. I've got many more great guests coming very soon, so stay tuned right here on Seb Talk Sports. And to take us out as usual, here's another brilliant track by All-Pro New York Giants running back, turned music creator and friend of the show, David Wilson. Catch you soon, guys.